Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Boxiest, and today we're going to continue the What If series. What if events had gone differently? And in this What If, we're going to change the history of Cobra Kai. What if Robby was focused during the events of Cobra Kai Season 6? So in this timeline, Tori's mom would still pass away, and the fights to determine the captains would still happen. Robby would still fight Miguel, and that fight would stay the same. Robby would still be balanced, and he would still defeat Miguel, so Robby would still be the boys' captain. Tori would still fight Sam, but she would still be fighting with anger, and Amanda would still get a call from the hospital, so Amanda and Daniel would still want to stop the fight, and much like in the original timeline, Tori would quit Miyagi-Do. So in this timeline, Sam would be the girls' Miyagi-Do captain, and Daniel and Johnny would choose Hawk to take Tori's place. Those events would continue, so Miyagi-Do would go to the Sekai Taikai, and they would be heartbroken to see Tori and Cobra Kai. The Sekai Taikai would continue. In this timeline, Robby wouldn't be distracted by Tori, and he would focus on the tournament. Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai would still be at the mixer, and Quan would still want to challenge Robby, but Robby wouldn't accept Quan's challenge. Those events would carry on. The first challenge would still happen. Miyagi-Do would want to protect Robby and Sam, and they would do protect the egg. Quan would still want to go after the Miyagi-Dos, but in this timeline, Miguel would fight him off. Miyagi-Do would be on defense, and only Devin and Dimitri would go down. Robby and Quan would fight, and Robby and Miguel would take Quan down. So Cobra Kai would be out, so it would be Miyagi-Do versus the Iron Dragons, and the rest of the Iron Dragons would still leave, so it would only be Axel and Zara. Robby and Miguel would team up against Axel, and Sam and Hawk would team up against Zara. Miguel and Robby would be using a combination of offense and defense, and Axel would try to knock him down. Hawk and Sam would try to take down Zara, but Zara would be able to fight them both off, and Zara would take down Sam, so Miyagi-Do would lose. The Sekai Taikai would continue. Miyagi-Do would still have to knock the other dojo off the platform. Devin would still be knocked within 10 seconds. But in this timeline, Robby would be focused, and he wouldn't be knocked off. So Miyagi-Do would be higher in the leaderboard. And in the main stage, Miyagi-Do would be the ones to fight Polar Slate. Robby and Sam would still start off. Sam and Robby would be doing the circle technique, and they would manage to knock down some of their opponents. But eventually Sam would be knocked down, so Devin would join Robby. Robby and Devin would continue to fight, and Devin would still sacrifice herself to save Robby. Hawk would join Robby on the platform, and they would continue taking down their opponents. And at this point, Polar Slate would be down to its last member, and they would manage to knock him down, so Miyagi-Do would win. And much like in the original timeline, Carmen would still be rushed to the hospital, and Johnny and Miguel would have to leave. The Miyagi-Do students would still go explore Barcelona, and they would still be at the tapas bar. This is when the Cobra Kais would show up, and Sam would still go outside to get some air. Quan would still want to mess with Robby, so Quan and Robby would start to have a rivalry. In this timeline, Zara wouldn't interact with the Miyagi-Dos, and she would leave them alone. Sam would still be walking down the beach, and she would still run into Axel. She would still compliment Axel on his kata, and the interaction between Sam and Axel would stay the same. And meanwhile in the States, Amanda would still try to convince Kenny to go to Barcelona, but Kenny still wouldn't want to go, and Kenny would still think that Anthony put laxatives in his water. Eventually Anthony would apologize to Kenny, and Devin would confess to Kenny that it was her that put laxatives in his water, so Kenny would decide to go. Eventually Miguel, Johnny, and Kenny would come back to Barcelona, and Kenny would still take Devin's place. The team matches would continue. Miyagi-Do would still fight Furia de Pantera, and the fight would stay the same. Dimitri and Hawk would still be arguing, and they would still land a point on Dimitri. Sam and Maria would continue to fight, and much like in the original timeline, Sam would land a point on Maria. The fight would continue. Hawk would continue the fight, and in this timeline, Hawk would tag in Kenny. Kenny would fight, and he would manage to land a point, and he would tag in Miguel. Miguel would finish the fight, and in this timeline, Miyagi-Do would beat Furia de Pantera. And during the next team match, Miyagi-Do would fight Redentores, and Miguel would still start off. He would use a combination of offense and defense, and he would tag in Robby, and Robby would land the first point. Robby would tag in Kenny, and much like in the original timeline, Kenny would get 2 points, and they would still advance in their matches. Cobra Kai would still fight Tiger Strike, but in this timeline, Cobra Kai would be focused. The fight would continue, and Quan would land the final point. Miyagi-Do would still fight Cobra Kai. Quan and Robby would start off, but in this timeline, Quan would score a point on Robby. Quan would still tag out, and Robby would tag in Miguel, and he would get the first point. Yoon and Dimitri would continue the fight. Dimitri, Hawk, and Kenny would team up to get the point on Yoon, and Hawk would once again tag in Miguel. Miguel and Quan would fight, but Quan would manage to land a point on Miguel, so Miguel would tag in Robby. Robby and Quan would fight, and that fight would stay the same. Robby would land the final point on Quan, so Meowito would beat Cobra Kai in this timeline. But even though Cobra Kai lost, they wouldn't be eliminated, but they would be in last place. The semi-finals would begin. Quan and Diego would still fight, but Quan would still defeat him. Zara and Maria would fight, but Zara would still defeat Maria. Axel would still fight Robby in the semi-finals, and during the first round, Robby would still land the first point. Everyone would be surprised, and they would begin to cheer, but this will make Axel mad, and he would begin to adapt, so Axel would still get 5 points. Sensei would get mad that Axel got hit, and he would want Axel to get more aggressive, so the fight would continue, and they would still each get 5 more points. So Sensei Wolf would still want Axel to break Robby's leg, so Axel would still try to break Robby's leg in this timeline, but in this timeline, Robby wouldn't get his leg caught by Axel, so Robby and Axel would continue to fight. Robby would use a combination of offense and defense, and he would remember all his training, so Robby would be able to land more points, and he would eventually tie the score. Everyone in the crowd would cheer, and Robby would eventually attempt a flying tornado kick, and he would be able to hit Axel, so Robby would get a knockdown, and he would get another 10 points. The timer would run out, so Robby would defeat Axel 21-11. Everyone in the crowd would cheer, and Meowito would celebrate. Sensei would be mad that Axel lost, and he would still tell him that he was ashamed to be a sensei, but in this timeline Axel wouldn't stand up to Wolf. Those events would continue. Sam and Tori would fight, and they would both use a combination of offense and defense. The match would be close, so in this timeline, Tori would defeat Sam, so she would advance to the finals. Tori and Zara would fight, and Zara would still get the upper hand in the first round, and she would still be ahead by 5 points. Tori would still be distracted, and she wouldn't be focused, so the fight would resume. Tori would continue fighting, but Tori still wouldn't be fighting properly, and Zara would continue landing points on Tori, and she would still get another 5 points. The final round would begin. Tori and Zara would face off. Tori would try to land some hits on Zara, but Zara would be able to counter Tori's attacks, and in this timeline, Zara would get a knockdown, so Zara would defeat Tori in this timeline. Zara would still be the girls' Sekai Taikai World Champion. The boys' finals would begin. Robby and Quan would fight. Quan would be fighting with offense and aggression, and he would score a couple points in the first round. Carice would want Quan to show no mercy, and he would remind Quan of what Master Kim taught him, and during the second round, Quan would start to get even angrier, and he would continue fighting with aggression, and he would get some points on Robby. Robby would be focused in this timeline, and he would get a knockout against Quan, so Robby would once again defeat Quan. Robby would be declared the boys' champion of the Sekai Taikai, and Robby would be happy. Even though Robby won, the Iron Dragons would still win by overall points, and those events would carry on. Robby and Tori would still get their career opportunity for Micon branding, and those events would stay the same. Even though Meowito didn't win the Sekai Taikai, they would still get many students, and Daniel and Johnny would continue to run Meowito. And that is where I'm gonna end this what if. Thank you guys for watching. What do you guys think would have happened if Robby was focused during the events of Cobra Kai Season 6? Let me know in the comments below. YouTube lets me know that the majority of you are not subscribed, so if you guys could subscribe, that would be much appreciated. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. And I'll see you guys next time.